Hi everybody, my name is Basu, City of Kovair. Welcome to today's webinar. Today's webinar is about the integration of Quality Center and Quick Test Pro, or QTP, with other tools using Kovair's integration technology called Omnibus. Today I have with me Atanu Majumdar. He is the VP Engineering of Kovair. I'll start with a brief presentation to give you an overview of the technology we are talking about, Omnibus. And then Atanu will show you actual demonstration of a number of different tools, how they work with each other and with QC and QTP. And there is no better person than Atanu to show that because he's the architect for this particular technology. Okay. So let's start with the basic question. Why do we need to integrate different ALM or SDLC tools? Now, the first goal of integration is kind of obvious. It is for the data visibility of objects from one tool to the other tools, what we call the data plumbing. But the data plumbing is just the tip of the iceberg. This is just the first goal. You should be able to achieve much more than that. For example, you should be able to create traceability relations between the objects in a number of different tools so that you can do actual change management, cross-tool change management. So that if the object in one tool is changed, you should be able to do impact analysis and find out what are the other objects in the other tools are impacted by that. Next is you should be able to do a cross-tool process automation. You see, in ALM, we use quite a few different kinds of tools which may have built-in process automation like workflow, etc., like a bug cracking tool or requirements management tool or a change management tool, etc. But what about a process which cuts across the tool for the whole life cycle for the development management? So when you are doing an integration of these different tools, you should be able to achieve that using your integration technology. And then finally, you should be able to do reporting and dashboard by getting the different data from different sources with different tools. Now, when I say the different data, it is not just the list of items coming from different tools, but based on the traceability relation, which we have already talked about, between the different objects and different tools, you should be able to get the metrics which are not possible with just one single tool. So when you have the traceability relations between different artifacts in different tools, you should be able to kind of have some hidden matrices available for your report and dashboard. So these are the major goals when you would like to do any kind of integration among your development tools. Now let's say we assume that, yes, we accept that integration is a great thing, but how do we achieve it? The first option you have is by doing a point-to-point integration. Actually, most of the vendors allow or offer this point-to-point integration among their own tools or between their tools and other vendors' tools. Now, good thing about point-to-point integration is it supports best-of-the-breed multi-vendor tools. But the biggest challenge is that you have to actually create this point-to-point integration between every pair of tools, which actually makes it very, very complex. The second option we have for integration is when the big vendors come to you and say that, guys, why do you need to buy all these different tools from different vendors? Because we have all the tools you need, and they are already integrated. I think that's a pretty good solution, especially for companies who do not have any other tool, just starting from the scratch, and you have a tons of money. But unfortunately, for most of the other companies, you're already using a number of different tools. And also, not necessarily all the tools from a single vendor are of the same quality. There are certain tools which are good, but not necessarily all tools. So the third option and the best option is the ALM integration middleware. So using an enterprise service bus architecture, you should be able to integrate the tools individually to an enterprise service bus. And by doing that, all these tools becomes integrated with each other. The advantage of ESB is, first of all, it's like point-to-point integration. It also supports best-of-the-breed multi-vendor tool. But unlike point-to-point integration, actually its complexity is much less. So you just need one adapter per tool to connect that tool to the enterprise service bus. So typically the complexity for point-to-point integration is order of n square, when n is the number of tools. For ESB, enterprise service bus, it is order of n. So diagrammatically, these are shown here in the next slide. And so here it shows that if you have 10 tools, then you need 45 distinct integrations for every pair of tools in case of point-to-point integration. But in case of ESB, you just need 10 adapters. So think about adding the 11th tool into the mix. When you add the 11th tool, then for point-to-point integration, you have to create 10 different integrations to connect that particular tool with all the other tools. But in case of ESB, you just need one adapter. So that is the kind of substantial savings you can make when you move from point-to-point to enterprise service bus. Kovair Omnibus is an ESB technology and integration middleware, and it is one of the leading, if not the only integration middleware available now with such a wide range of adapters. And these are the adapters available today, and this is actually a growing list. Every month we are kind of releasing new adapters. Typically it takes about 6 to 8 man-weeks to create a new adapter. So if you don't see an adapter or a tool you are interested in, typically it takes about 6 to 8 man-weeks on average. So let's discuss a little bit about what do we get in Omnibus. So first of all, Omnibus is web service based on web service standard, SOA based. So which basically means you can integrate any third-party vendor tool or your own homegrown in-house tools independent of the location. It can be anywhere in the world. And it can run on any kind of platform, whether it runs on Windows, on Linux, on mainframe, even behind the firewall. That's the beauty of web services. And as I mentioned, that it uses the enterprise service bus as architecture. Now, as part of the Omnibus platform, what you get is the Kovair entity framework. So the entity framework basically allows you to create different kinds of entities or objects or artifacts which correspond to the objects in the other tools. So for example, for Quality Center, you can create 3 different entities, one for, let's say, the requirements, one for the test cases, one for the defects. So Kovair Entity Framework actually allows you to create as many unlimited entities corresponding to different objects and different tools. It also has the interface to create the traceability relations between the different objects and different tools. Also, it includes the Omni process, which is Kovair's leading process technology, workflow technology. And using a Visio-like visual interface, you can create a process for any of these objects. So for the requirements or for the defects, for test cases, you can create multiple different workflows using this drag and drop interface of Omni process. Also, it includes the reporting and dashboarding technology. So you can create these reports and dashboards very easily. As a matter of fact, we have got 4 different types of reporting engine, HTML, Excel, Crystal, and Microsoft Word. And you can create these different kinds of reports and put them on the dashboard very easily, and you show the different data coming from different tools as well as the traceability relations between them. Omnibus platform also includes the administrative interface, where using which you can create the business rules. So one thing is very important to understand here is the Omnibus adapters for different tools are actually very thin layer around the data schema of these different tools. Actual business rules means what is the condition by which the data is replicated from one tool to another tool. Those kinds of business rules are actually created and managed by the administrative interface of Omnibus, which basically means using the same adapter, the end users can actually create and manage these business rules on the fly. You don't have to bring any developer or any IT resource to actually code and change the adapter, which is necessary for any point-to-point integration. Because in point-to-point integration, the integration code itself has the hard-coded business rules, and every time you need to change that business rule, you have to change that integration code. And finally, of course, the Omnibus platform includes the Omnibus execution engine. Then Omnibus also needs the adapters for the various tools you'd like to integrate. Typically, these adapters are for the tools which has got its own repository. So, for example, you may have adapter for Quality Center, adapter for Requisite Pro, adapter for TFS, etc. On the other hand, for those tools which does not have its own repository, we also have, Omnibus has the plugins. So, for example, for Eclipse, for Visual Studio, you have the plugins by which you can actually access the Kovair repository directly from within those tools. So from Eclipse, you would be able to see all the different data which is actually coming directly from the Kovair repository. Now, Omnibus is not just a set of API and set of adapters. It's actually a complete environment for managing your integration. It has got all the kind of advanced features which are necessary for enterprise class production level integration environment, like the conflict detection, the system recovery, the load balancing, etc. Now let's talk about the QC and QTP and how the integration is done. Actually, there are two different scenarios. In one scenario, when you are using Kovair's built-in application, so Kovair actually has two different applications. One is the ALM Studio, another is the ITSM Studio. And the ALM Studio also comes in two flavors. One is a more traditional requirements management, test management, issues management, etc. And the other one is an agile implementing Scrum methodology, whereas the ITSM Studio is an implementation of ITIL version 3. So if you are using ALM Studio, either of the flavors, then you can actually synchronize with Quality Center seamlessly. So for example, the requirements of ALM Studio is synchronized with the requirements in QC. The test cases, test plans, test sets, etc. are all synchronized with QC with the corresponding items, as well as the defects in QC is synchronized with the issues in ALM Studio. And then we also have the QTP adapters, so that you can actually independently integrate QTP with the test management application within ALM Studio. That means you can directly use QTP independent of QC. So even if you do not use QC, you can directly use QTP directly with the ALM Studio. So ALM Studio can work with QC, can work with QTP, either independently or together. The second option is when you are not using any of the Kovair's built-in applications, that means you are not using ALM Studio, in that case, you can actually integrate QC with any other third-party tools for which we have the adapters. In that case, the QTP works directly with QC using QC's own built-in integration. So if you're already using QC and QTP already integrated, then fine, you can just continue using that, and just you can integrate QC with the rest of the other tools and have an ecosystem of all these development tools together. In today's demo, actually, we will be using the second option, since today our focus is Omnibus, not any of the Kovair's built-in tool. So that's why we will show you how QC integrates with other tools, and the QTP is already integrated with QC with the QC's built-in integration. So that's why we will not cover the QTP part of the integration separately. Now, this is the scenario of today's demonstration. We'll start with Requisite Pro requirements management. So we'll be using Requisite Pro as the requirements management tool. Quality Center for the test management tool. Test management basically will show you both from requirements as well as defect point of view also, along with the test management. Then we'll have the Visual Studio and TFS for configuration management. We'll see from Eclipse how the developers can see all these different items from different tools sitting from Eclipse. We'll also use ClearQuest for defect tracking, and then we'll use the project management and reporting capability of Kovair. So this is a typical scenario you will see in many of the organizations where you have the Quality Center and QTP for the testing, but basically most of the business analysts use a different requirements management tool, typically Requisite Pro, and they use a different bug tracking tool for all the bug tracking and issues management. In this case, ClearQuest, it can be Jira or some other bug tracking tool also. So we'll show all these different kinds of integration together, and Atanu will kind of explain that. So the script will be following, starting with submitting a customer requirement from the corporate website. that is a kind of integration with any kind of web form. And then we'll show how that customer requirement is replicated to Requisite Pro and create a functional requirement in Requisite Pro, create a traceability relation between the customer and functional requirement. Then we'll go to the quality center and we'll see that both the customer and functional requirements there, and create a test case there and create a traceability link between the test case and the customer and functional requirements. Then we'll go to TFS and see all these different items in TFS. We'll create a code file, check-in in TFS, and while check-in, we will create a link between the work item in TFS, which is a customer requirement, and the code file. Then from Eclipse, we'll see all these different items using the Eclipse plugin. Then we'll come back to Quality Center, create a defect, and we'll see in ClearQuest that defect is replicated. Then we'll go to Kovair, and this is the first time actually we'll go to Kovair, and we'll see from Kovair the different kinds of traceability reports, the network impact analysis diagram, traceability hierarchical report, as well as a Microsoft Word document. Atanu will be also showing a number of different dashboards for all these different kinds of artifacts coming from different tools in a single dashboard. All right, so I think we are ready for the product demo, so I'll transfer it to Atanu. But also remember one more thing, that as you are watching the demo, I'm sure that you will have many questions. So please feel free to enter your questions, type your questions in the questions panel in the GoToWebinar, that little window there. And at the end of the demo, both Atanu and I will be very happy to answer any of those questions. Okay, so let me transfer it to Atanu. So Atanu, it's now over to you. Okay, Atanu, it's with you now.
Thanks, Kai. Hi, everybody. So for today's demo, we have chosen a development scenario involving different stakeholders like customer, business analysts, developers, testers, and project managers who are using different tools throughout the application lifecycle stages. We will see how an integration framework like Kovair Omnibus helps them to do their job efficiently within their native tool environment and stay connected through the complete software lifecycle management stages. Okay? So now, first we'll take the role of a customer. You could see this is the Kovair contact page, and you could see a related link here, customer requirement submission. If I click on that, it comes up with a web form, and this web form can be customized as per your organization's brand requirement and can be hooked from your corporate site for your customers to submit their request, feature request, any kind of bug, anything, any defect, they can submit it through this web form. So let's start with a feature request submitted by the customer. So feature request from customer using okay, and let's say author is Sean Wright, company communication, and let's put the priority as high, and let's copy the title also in the description, and let's submit this customer requirement. Now this is just one form for customer to submit requirement. Customer may be using other tools, other requirement tools, or email submission. using which they can submit their requirement. Now this web form is created using the Kovair Omnibus API framework, and you can see that these drop downs, these are kind of bidirectional, so this is getting the data from the Kovair configuration for the requirement or feature, and you can see that all these drop down values are coming from Kovair Omnibus configuration using the Omnibus API. So now customer is done with the submission of the requirement. Now what we will do is we will take the role of a business analyst. In this case, Mark is business analyst, and he is using Requisite Pro to kind of manage his requirements and also create customer the functional requirements. So now let's open up Requisite Pro interface. So this is Mark. This is the interface for the Requisite Pro. Let's find out our customer request. Refresh, it takes some time to. So this is the feature request from customer using web form. So if I double click on that, you get to see the the details of this thing, and also remember that customer set the priority as high. You could see this here. So as a business analyst, what I would do is I would create a functional requirement, new functional requirement here. So functional requirement from Rec Pro demo. Okay. See, let's put the description here. Let's also change some of the attributes. So we can say priority is high, and let's submit this functional requirement. So we have submitted the functional requirement. The next thing what I would like to do is, what is this functional requirement for? So this requirement is to, the functional requirement is to implement the customer requirement. So let's create a testability from the customer requirement, which we just submitted from the web page. This was the customer requirement. Okay, so now this is done. If I now go to the feature request form customer using web form, you will see that now this is related to the functional requirement. So as a business analyst, my job is to see the requirements, analyze them, approve them, and then create the functional requirements or system requirements to implement those customer feature requests. So as a business analyst, I am using Requisite Pro. I'm not getting into any other tools. Customer may be using other tools, other web forms, emails, but from within my tool, the Requisite, which is in this case is Requisite Pro, I'm being able to see all these requirements getting into this tool, and not only these requirements are coming here, but they are also synchronized with whatever changes customer may be making in their tool or any modifications they're asking for. It is always the latest up-to-date requirement that I'm getting here, and I can kind of react to the changes and change my functional requirements here. Okay, so as a business analyst, I'm done with this tool. Now we will take the role of a tester who is using Quality Center. So let's go to a separate server here, and let's open up Quality Center. Okay, so Ted is tester here, and he is logging into QC interface. This is a web-based tool. And you can see that in Quality Center, you have different objects available, requirements, test cases, test lab, defects, and dashboard. Okay. So now as a tester, what is my job? My job is to create test cases for the requirements. But how do I get my requirements? Because requirements are submitted by the customer. Requirements are analyzed by the business analyst who is using a different tool. In this case is Requisite Pro. So from within Quality Center, how do I get my requirements? So let's see. So if you go into the requirements now here, you see that the requirement that we just submitted from the web page shows up here, feature request from customer using web form. And also the functional requirement that we submitted from the Rec Pro. So as a tester, I get to see the requirements and the customer requirements and the functional requirements from within QC, even though it has all these artifacts have originated their life cycle in different tools. Now, since we have the requirement here, the next step for the tester is to create the test case. So let's go create a test case. So test case for webinar demo from QC. Okay. So this is the one we just created right now. Now let's also link this test case, because this is the test case that I'm creating to implement or to test the functional requirement coming from the Requisite Pro and the customer requirement coming from the web page. So let's kind of link to this customer requirement and as well as the functional requirements. So now the test case is linked to the requirements, and if I go back to the requirements and double click on the requirement, and if I see the test coverage, see, so now I have written a test case and that requirement is covered for testing. Okay, and same is the case for functional requirement coming from Rec Pro. Okay, so for now as a tester, I could, from my own native tool, Quality Center, I could see all the requirements coming from different tools, and I can create my test case and link the test case to the requirements so that the requirements are covered for testing. Okay. Now the next role that we will play is a developer role. So let's go to another server here, and let's open up Visual Studio. So Dave is the developer here, and he is using Microsoft Visual Studio 2010 to develop the code necessary to implement the customer requirement or the feature request coming from the customer and the related the functional or system requirement. Okay, and he is using TFS to do all his stuff. So here, if you are familiar with Visual Studio and TFS, there is a Teams. You can see that there is a Team Explorer here, and if you go into your work items and open up the requirements here, again, as a developer, I'm only using Visual Studio, so I don't want to kind of use or go to any other tool to see what is the requirement that I need to code for. Are there any test cases for those requirements? All those things I would like to see it from within my own development tool environment, which is in this case is Visual Studio. And as you can see here, this is the requirement that we submitted from our web page, and this is the requirement that is replicated here from the Requisite Pro. Now, if you go here in the feature request, so this is the detail of the request, and if you get to the links page, you see here, not just the requirement, but also all the traceable items from the requirement, like the functional requirement in Requisite Pro or the test case in Quality Center, shows up here. So I could see different artifacts generated from different tools, but I could see here and not just see those items, but in the proper context. Okay, so this test case is created in Quality Center to test this particular requirement. Okay, and similarly, if I go to the test cases, I could see the test case coming from Quality Center. So I could see the requirement coming from Requisite Pro, and I could see the test case coming from Quality Center, and I know exactly what to code and how I can test those requirements from my environment. Okay. Now, as a developer, the next thing I would do is to write the code. Okay. So let's open up a project. Let's copy any of these product files. So copy. Copy a product and just rename it. Webinar demo. Double click it, it shows up here. Maybe change this to webinar demo product class, save it, and now I would like to check it in. Okay, so check into what? Check into TFS as a source control. So this is the code file that I have written to implement this particular requirement. So while checking in, what I would like to do is I would like to associate this kind of change or code implementation to the particular customer requirements, which is in this case feature request from customer coming from web form. Okay, so let's check it in. So as a developer from within the Visual Studio environment, I could see all the artifacts that are generated in different tools. I could see the requirement, I could see the test cases. I have total information about what needs to be done, what needs to be tested, and I could implement the code, check it in, and link it to the requirement, and I'm done with my developer role. Okay. Then now the next thing I would like to do is to do this is the developer dev using Visual Studio, but I would like to show the same thing using from Eclipse. So let's open up Eclipse. So let's, because this is the Eclipse starting up. Okay, so now in Eclipse doesn't have something like the Visual Studio TFS, but as Kai mentioned that we have plugin for Eclipse as well as Visual Studio. But for today's demo, we have not used the plugin in Visual Studio. We have shown you the TFS tool to do the coding and all other stuff. But for Eclipse, we would show the Kovair plugin. You can see this is the Omnibus menu, which is the Kovair plugin. And if you connect from here, you log on as developer. It shows up a Explorer here, Omnibus Explorer, and this shows all the projects that you are working on. So the current project that we are using for this demo is new app development, and you see all the entities coming from different tools, Requisite Pro, VSTS Developer, TFS, Clarity, all these things. So let's open up the requirement list here. Taking some time. The multi-server environment, actually what we are using here. So if you see this is the customer requirement that we submitted from the web page, and this is the function requirement from Requisite Pro. So both shows up here, and let's go see the details for this particular requirement. So again, Dave is, in this case, he's using Eclipse for his development work, and he is getting to see all the relevant information exactly as we have shown in Visual Studio, but in this case using Kovair plugin. Okay, so the details of the requirement, and if I go into the traceability section, I could see all the traceable items. So this is the test case created in Quality Center. This is the Requisite Pro functional requirement. This is the TFS change set, the file that I checked in from Visual Studio shows up here. Okay, so all the traceable artifacts from the requirement shows up here. I could open up any of these items and get to the details. So all on a sudden, as I become a more knowledgeable developer and have the complete information, and not only these, all these items are not just one-time replication here. All these items are synchronized within different tools, and it is giving me latest up-to-date information. So I'm not working on any outdated or outdated kind of artifact or item, which is often the case in the absence of any kind of any integration framework like this. Okay, so I'm done with the Eclipse environment here. So as a developer, I have used both Visual Studio and Eclipse, and I could see all the artifacts generated in different tools, and then work on those, create the code file, link that code file to the particular requirement so that the world knows that this requirement is now coded, and this is the code file that was written to implement this code. Okay. Now let's get back to the tester role again. Since the development is now done, I would like to test that test case, execute that test case, and see if any bugs are coming up. And if bugs are there, I would like to report that in QC. Okay. So to do that, let's open up Quality Center again here. So this is Quality Center interface, and TED, as you remember, we played the tester role and we created the test case here. So what we would do is we would go into the test case. So now let's assume that we have executed the test case. For one other thing I would like to mention here is for today's demo purpose, we have created a manual test case here, but you could create a automation test case, as Kai mentioned, using QTP, and that can be linked to this particular requirement, and then you can run that automation test case either from QC or from QTP as a scheduler or whatever, and that can automatically find out defects and log it here. But for today's webinar demo purpose, what I would like to do is I would like to create a defect manually here. So assume that the tester has executed this test case and the test case failed. So now what he wants to do, he wants to create a defect from the test case. So what we would do here is we would go to the linked defects for these test case. Remember the test case for webinar demo from QC that was created. So let's create a defect and link to this particular test case. So defect from QC. Okay, and let's put the severity as high and type as defect and things like that, and let's submit this defect. So as a tester, after the development is done by dev, I could test it here and see there is a bug and then log that bug into QC. Okay, so now these defects could be collected in another tool for your bug management or defect management group or your help desk group. So for today's demo, we have kept another tool which is ClearQuest here, which is getting used for the defect management or bug management. So now, but your bugs are getting generated from QC by the testers. So how do I see my bugs in ClearQuest? So let's get to the ClearQuest and see. So this is the ClearQuest, IBM Rational ClearQuest. You may be aware of this particular tool, which is used mainly for the bug defect and change management. So let's connect to the tool. Let's go to the all request. I now sort by request ID here. Sometimes it takes some time to get up here. It's taking some time here, but generally it shows up here as a defect, as you can see other requirements here. So you create that defect in any other tool that gets replicated in this tool. But for now, this is taking time, so I would move on for today's demo purpose. So now we have kind of played the role of the customer, business analyst, developer, tester, and I have seen that all these people could do their job from within their tool environment without getting into any other tool. They could do their job efficiently and have access to all the artifacts that are generated from different tools. So now let's take the role of a project manager. So the project manager for today's demo is using Kovair. So this is the Kovair. Kovair is a complete 100% web-based application. So let's log on as a Mary. Mary is the project manager. So this is the Kovair interface, and as you can see here, the different dashboard graphics coming up. So this is project manager Mary's dashboard, where she could see all the different metrics like requirement distribution, requirement stability. These are different graphical reports. Some textual or tabular reports are there, like requirements grouped by priority and code coverage, test coverage, and things like that. Okay, so I'll come back to these dashboard later, but just for now, what I would like to explain is that these are not just nice pictures, but these are real kind of clickable graphics. So you can see this is the pie chart for the customer part of the requirement distribution. So let's click on that, and this is actually all these metrics are generated runtime on actual data coming from different tools. So for example, here you could see here feature request from customer using web form. So it shows up here as we submitted from the web page. This is a customer requirement collected the information is collected at the Kovair level, and we could see the graphical report here. Similarly, if I click on the functional requirement, you could see the requirement coming from RecPro. So see here the functional requirement coming from RecPro. Okay, so I'll get back to dashboard later, but let's now first get into the requirements. So I will briefly explain about the kind of the interface for Kovair. So you could see that different objects or work items here, like projects, requirements, test set, test cases, test runs, issues. So these are in Kovair, we call these as entities. So let's now concentrate on this particular requirement that we submitted from the web page. Okay, so let's click on this and let's get to the details of it. So as you can see, these are the different detail sections, even though it has been submitted from the web page. So now let's see here, as a project manager, I would like to see what are the functional requirements that are linked to this particular customer requirement. Okay, so if I expand that, I see a functional requirement from RecPro for webinar. So as a project manager, because I'm a project manager, so I'm not using RecPro, I'm not using Quality Center, I'm not using Visual Studio or Eclipse. I'm using Kovair, which is a web-based interface, and from here I would like to see how this requirement is moving through its life cycle. So is the requirements analyzed? Is the functional requirement created? Yes, I see it here. It's created. Okay. Now, excuse me. So let's see if the test case is created in QC. So I could see a test case created in QC, and that also shows up here. Now let's see whether this requirement is coded or not. Okay. So if I get to TFS change set here, I could see a change set here. So that means this requirement has already been coded. Okay. And so I could see all these different artifacts that are getting generated in different tools, and I could easily, as a project manager, understand from within this interface that how the requirement is moving into its life cycle. Okay. But if I want to see all the relations in one single place, there is another interface provided by Kovair here, which we call as a relation diagram or an impact diagram, which is basically a network diagram architecture. So see here, this is the requirement that we submitted from the web page, feature request from customer using web form. And this is the functional requirement that Mark has created from Requisite Pro. This is the test case that has been created by Ted from Quality Center. And this is the change set or the code implement by developer Dave. Okay, and if I double click on this, it would bring what was the file in that change set. I could see it here. Okay, and from here even I could see the record directly. Okay, and even I can open up the content. Okay, so if I open up with a notepad, let's say. See, this is the code. This is the code that we checked in from Visual Studio. So I could see the code directly from within the network diagram. One thing I would like to mention here, this is an example of a federated integration provided by Kovair Omnibus integration framework. What does that mean? So that means that the code file is not getting physically stored within the Kovair. It's there within the TFS. We are getting to TFS and bringing that code file on demand when you are asking for it. So when you click on that content link, it is getting to TFS and bringing that. So it's a kind of federated integration. The information is not physically stored or replicated here, but is getting from there on demand. So Kovair supports two kinds of integration. One is the data getting replicated and synchronized, and the other, which is this example, is a federated, that the data resides in one tool, but is getting shared in other tools. Okay. So now there is another interface for seeing this kind of traceability. So let's get to the project traceability. This is, we call it as a traceability hierarchy view. And you see this is the project. This is the top level project, new app development. And if I expand that, I could see the requirements, the different, all the requirements. So we would focus on the current requirement, feature request from customer using web form. If I expand that, functional requirement coming from RecPro. I could see the change set coming from TFS. If I expand that, I could see the file, and also I could see the test case coming from QC and the defect that I have logged from QC also. So all this information is shown up in a hierarchy format for all the requirements that are there in the system. So as a project manager, I have complete access to all the artifacts that are generated using different tools by different stakeholders during the different life cycle stages. I could see it from here in one single screen. Okay. Another thing that I would like to show you is the reports. So one particular report I would like to show you is the project traceability document, and let me explain how this report is generated. So this is a word-based report. So Kovair has a Word plugin using which you can create your own report template where you can use the Words, Microsoft Words, the rich formatting functionalities, and you can embed all these different artifacts or information getting generated in different tools. You could embed those information within the Word and then upload that Word report or template to Kovair, and then from that point onwards, that Word report is available for any of your project manager to generate and see the report on demand. Okay, and also you could create a kind of scheduler report. So let's say you want to send this report every week to your manager so that he or she can have a summarized information as to what is happening in a nicely formatted Word report. So let's see how this report is shown up here. Okay, let's open up. As you can see, it's generated on demand, and there are quite a lot of requirements into this in this system. So there's I think a good number of pages in this Word document. So 49 pages, as you can see here. Okay, so this is the requirement, as you can see, and this is the. So let's update the field and update the entire table. Okay, and see how the requirement that we submitted from web page shows up here. And if I go there, I could see this is the request, feature request from web page, and all these informations are actually populated runtime from different tools or Kovair, and you could see all this information here. And you could see the RecPro requirement here, the test case from QC, the defect from QC, and even the change set by the coder. And if you have any code reviewer comment, performance comment, security review comment, all these things should show up here, and even the product file, okay, the code file. And we could even from here, from the web, from the Word, you could have a link to any of these entity item or the code file, and from within the Word, you could click on those links, and it would show up the code file, or would show the entity. So this is not just a static document. This is an active document from where he could jump onto the particular requirement, particular test case, the code file, everything. Okay. So now let's get to some of the dashboards. So let me explain some other dashboards. We did that with the requirement distribution, but you can see here the requirements by test run status. So as you are testing your requirements in Quality Center, by the status of the requirement, whether it is run, whether it is paused, whether it is not run, this shows up here. And this is a report for the requirements code coverage. So you see the requirement, in our case, the feature request, and it shows that a TFS count file is there. So that means this requirement is covered by code. Okay, so that means it has been already been implemented. The next the report is requirement test coverage. So here this requirement functional requirement for webinar demo. So see here the functional requirement and the feature request from customer. So both of them shows that there is a test case, which is, you remember, probably Ted created that test case in Quality Center. So I could see it here from within my dashboard. I don't need to even get to the detail item. From here I could see, okay, so this requirement is already covered for testing. Okay, test run coverage. So you could see here the linked requirement count is 2, defects count. So we have already created a defect for this particular test case. So you see the defect shows up here. And if I can, from here I can click on this particular requirement and get to the details of the defect and all these things. So summary information is reflected in the dashboard, and I can get into detail using the drill down at any point of time. So similarly, these different other reports like test distribution status, test status, issue submission trend, so how the issues are getting submitted and how the issues are getting closed. Issue distribution by status, issue group by status. So, and again, this dashboard is a completely configurable dashboard. In Kovair, everything is configurable. This is just an example dashboard that we have shown here for project manager Mary, but you can create, as also you can see, you can have multiple dashboards. Okay, if you go to a different dashboard, it shows up different reports from. So see here, submit trend, distributed over criticality. It's a planned cost thing, issue submission trend, requirement by release type priority. So you could create all these dashboards based on your organization requirement or your individual user requirement. They can, the dashboards could be different for developer, for tester. As you can see here, different dashboards are created. Okay, so with these, I would like to conclude the demo part of the webinar, and I would like to hand it over to Sky for the next question and answer session. Thank you, Sky.
Thank you, Atanu. Atanu, before I transfer the control, do you want to quickly check the clear quest whether it has been replicated there?
I can check it. Yeah, so defect for webinar demo from QC. So this is the defect that we created in QC. It shows up here now. So it takes some time. We basically, the Kovair Omnibus works in an asynchronous mode and collect all these events generated in different tools and then synchronize it with other tools. So sometimes, and depending on the server and all these things, and we are using for the demo purpose different servers and stuff like that, and all these servers not in one domain. So it's basically in different parts of the world. Okay. So as you can see, the defect is replicated in ClearQuest. Okay.
All right. Thank you, Atanu. So as I mentioned that, please use your question panel to to pose any question, and there are a few questions that are already there. So let me read some of those. So here is actually, you can also send us email to sales@kovair.com for if you have any other questions, if you would like to see a demo, specific demo with respect to your set of tools, etc. Now, one question I have here is how long would it take to install and get running the HPQC integration for an on-site Kovair implementation? I think to answer that question, it depends on what are the other tools you would like to integrate. Are you integrating QC with Kovair only, or there are other tools involved also? So depending on the number of tools, it can be anything between, let's say, 2 to 6 weeks kind of time frame typically. If you are implementing Kovair, for example, ALM Studio, again, depending on what are you implementing, whether you are doing the requirements, test management, issues management, whatever it is. So depending on that, it will take accordingly the time. So if you're using out-of-the-box solution, you can actually start almost immediately within a few days. But if you start from the scratch, it typically takes about 3 to 4 weeks. So I think that I could not be very particular about the answer because it depends on the particular circumstances. Okay, the next question is that do you have a SharePoint integration? The answer is yes, we have a SharePoint integration. And actually, we have a very good SharePoint integration in a way that we can almost replicate any artifact in SharePoint as a SharePoint list. So this can be a bi-directional integration. So you change in SharePoint, will change it in Kovair or any other tool which is kind of managing that particular artifact. One other question is, how do we decide the efficiency of integration of multiple tools? What are the preconditions that should be ensured to obtain good results post-integration of many tools? Well, I think what you are asking is the ROI for integration. Actually, we have a white paper written on that about the ROI and all the advantages you get out of integration. Why don't you send an email to our sales@kovair.com? We'll be very happy to share that with you. I think you can also download it from our website. Otherwise, we can ask our sales guys to send you that particular white paper. That has got a pretty good detail about the ROI in terms of the efficiency. I think that's what you mean by the return on investment. Then the next question is about when we upgrade the tools, how do we update the adapters? So basically, every time we update the tool, for example, QC, when the new version comes, we typically update the adapters also. We see that if the existing adapter can work with the new version, if not, we create a new adapter for this new version. Actually, we did it for the QC10 because the QC9 adapter didn't work with QC10. So we do the same thing for each and every tool. And I have got a question, the last one is about pricing. So basically the pricing depends on the particular adapters you'll be using, the number of users, etc. So our salespeople will be very happy to discuss that with you. So send us an email to sales@kovair.com and our sales guys will be happy to answer any of your questions regarding that. So with that, I would like to conclude this webinar. Thank you very much for joining our webinar today, and especially thanks to Atanu for doing that wonderful demonstration. Thank you.